This is a special best of edition of Northwestern Outdoors Radio, recorded in the saltwater off of Port Hardy, British Columbia. I think you're going to enjoy this.
It's time again for Northwestern Outdoors Radio, the show covering fishing, hunting, and all sorts of outdoor recreation and destinations right here in the region you live and play in. Northwestern Outdoors is brought to you every week by Max Lure Company, makers of the world-famous wedding ring spinner, by Loophole, America's Optics Authority, and by Sportsman's Warehouse, America's premier outfitter. Northwestern Outdoors is also sponsored by Wallowa County in Northeast Oregon, where you'll find both nature and fun. By Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing, offering you the affordable Canadian fishing trip of a lifetime. And by Camp Chef, the way to cook outdoors. So grab your fishing rod or hunting gear, load up the boat or lace up your boots, and let's head outdoors with your host, John Cruz.
Where do I start? How do I go about describing the best saltwater fishing trip of my entire life? I've been sharing the reports with you about the epic salmon run forecast off of Vancouver Island this summer, but having just experienced it, I've got to tell you, it is a beyond incredible fishing experience, especially when you juxtapose it with the far less than stellar salmon fishing we're expecting off the Washington and Oregon coast this summer. To say we've got a great show for you this week is an understatement. We are taking you to Port Hardy. It's at the end of the highway at the north end of Vancouver Island in British Columbia. That's where my wife, my daughter, my son, and I all went for a 4-night stay and 3 days of fishing with Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing. We'll talk to owner Chad Calder about the all-inclusive packages he offers that includes not only fishing, but fish processing, hotel stays, and meals available at several restaurants in town, all on his dime. Combine that with a favorable exchange rate, and I'll tell you what, I was singing "Oh Canada." The fun part of this show, though, is going to be our on-the-water conversations with our guides. Mitch Walker will tell you about the trifecta of fish catching we enjoyed during our first day on the water, and share some techniques that you'll want to try if you want to land a variety of different saltwater species. Guide Brian Ramage was our on-the-water host for our next 2 days. He'll tell you exactly how he rigged up to hook salmon after salmon after salmon in a beyond believable morning of fishing. And we spent some time off the water too. It turns out there's quite a few opportunities to hike, watch wildlife, and even surf at the north end of Vancouver Island. Louisa Bates with the Port Hardy Visitor Info Center will tell you all about them. In addition to this, we'll also tell you about how to get to Port Hardy, give you a few travel tips that may come in handy as well. And as usual, we'll also have our Sportsman's Warehouse Trivia Question of the Week, where you get the chance to win the $25 gift card we give away every week from America's premier outfitter. But before we get any further into this, I think we need to go fishing. This week we're going to preempt our regular edition of Sportsman Spotlight because, like I said, we are heading to Port Hardy, BC, and our first interview segment is taking place on the water in the Queen Charlotte Strait. The last 2.5 hours with our guide, Brian Ramage, have been incredible. My daughter, 13-year-old Faith, and I have hooked into 3 salmon using traditional salmon methods. We're basically a downrigger and a flasher and a coyote spoon in this case. But what's incredible is not the fact that we've hooked into salmon, it's everything else we've hooked into. We have hooked into multiple lingcod, we've hooked into countless rockfish and sea bass. It has been non-stop action for 2 hours straight. Brian, why is this happening?
Well, we found a spot here a few years ago that, it's incredible. We got all sorts of underwater structure. There's rocks and caverns and stuff. And we pick a spot that's got, a steady, about a 60-foot depth and drop our gear down to within about 10 feet of that. And the lingcod we found were just climbing all over our gear. Black bass, quillback, you name it. And actually today we got into, 3 salmon doing this? I got to tell you, I'm tired. I've been running from one side of the boat to the other, dropping gear as fast as they're picking up fish. It has been just spectacular.
And I guess that's the key here, is the structure. You're looking for structure that's going to hold both bottom fish and areas that are going to hold salmon. But this is completely counterintuitive to how I've ever fished for bottom fish before. I'm always used to jigging for bottom fish, never even thought of trolling for them with salmon gear. But it works.
Oh, it absolutely works. We were surprised ourselves. A friend of ours, Henry, came by here one day. He was fishing for salmon, and all of a sudden he just started picking up lings after lings after lings. So we've turned it into a little bit of a spot for us. I'm sure a lot of the locals drive by us and wonder what the heck we're doing over here. But I got to tell you, we're pretty busy. It's going well.
The other nice thing about this, folks, is that you're not using heavy gear. Again, we're just fishing coyote spoons, so once you get that clip off the downrigger, you're just into the fight with the fish. And you're only fishing about 60 feet of water. It's just fantastic. So we're going to tell you about more things you can do with Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing. But the next time you're trolling for salmon, keep in mind, you might want to go ahead and put on a coyote spoon and go ahead and try for some other fish too. One last thing before we go. Why weren't we using anchovies?
Could you imagine trying to keep anchovies on the lines at that pace? I had a bad enough time getting spoons down. If I had to take time out to put anchovies on the line, we would never got any of those in the boat, right? It was a good time.
It's just that good, folks. It's just that good out here fishing off of Port Hardy, BC with Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing. Hang tight. We're going to tell you more about a fishing trifecta in just a few moments.
A quality and affordable fishing adventure is waiting for you off Vancouver Island with Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing. Located in Port Hardy, British Columbia, you can drive or fly to your all-inclusive guided fishing vacation. Whether you're after big salmon, hard-fighting halibut, or a cooler full of red snapper and lingcod, you can catch it all here. Better yet, your lodging, meals, and fish processing are all taken care of. Want one more reason to go? The price. With the Canadian dollar exchange rate where it is right now, your U.S. dollar goes further. Space is limited, so go to coastwidesportsfishing.com to book your trip. That's coastwidesportsfishing.com for an incredible BC fishing adventure.
He said we're right on him. Without missing a beat, you'll drop your line down to 42 feet. If you don't screw up, it won't be long. Someone in this boat's gonna sing Fish On. Fish on, fish on. Do it by the book, don't take too long. Set the hook, reel it in strong. Fish on.
Welcome back to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. We are broadcasting today from a 25-foot Grady White in the saltwater off of Port Hardy, BC. We're with guide Mitch Walker. We've had a fantastic day. Mitch guides for Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing. And Mitch, thank you for a fantastic trifecta day on the water.
Oh, thank you guys. You guys were rock stars on the rods.
Well, I don't know about that, but I do know you found the fish for us, and for that I'm grateful. And let's go ahead and kind of run through today, and we'll start off with what we started with, salmon fishing. Now, I'll be honest, this happened in June, and, when it comes to June, early July, I was really expecting like 7 to 10 pound Chinook, but the very first Chinook that my son hooked into, our assistant producer, David Cruz, 20-pound fish. And, the 3 fish we got after that were all 12 to 15 pounds, great fighters, good-sized fish for this time of year.
Absolutely. The numbers are pretty good coming through at this time, and it's beautiful fish, and it's just a lot of fun to fight them like that, and it's great to see you guys do well on them.
Well, I really enjoyed this style of fishing, too. Down in the States, we generally use spinning reels or level wind reels. Up here, you call those coffee grinders. And you use these single-action reels that, for lack of a better word, look like an oversized fly rod, but they're just a hoot to fish with.
Yeah, they are a lot of fun. Obviously, we found out that today. It adds a little bit more sport to it, I find, and it makes it a lot of fun.
So I know, and my son definitely knows why they're called knuckle busters. Well, why don't you explain to our listeners why these single action reels are basically referred to as knuckle busters for a lot of folks?
So what happens is that when the fish decides to run, the reel will tend to spin backwards fast, and if your hands aren't out of the way in time, they'll wrap your knuckles pretty good.
But that's part of the fun of fishing like this, is basically letting the reel and the drag do the work. Again, beautiful reels, and these were really high quality. They're Islander reels. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, the Islander reels, I'm no expert on them, but they're manufactured on the island here, and run you a couple $100, but awesome. I have 2 of my own, and they're great to fish with.
And I understand that these reels actually have their very own serial number. They're that special.
They do, yeah. Everyone's marked, I believe, with the serial number, what number it is made. I think my salmon reel is somewhere around 3,000.
Something else we were doing today, besides, fishing with these reels, you did a really good job of figuring out where the fish were. And unlike some of the folks that were out in the general area where we were fishing, you didn't leave the fish to find more fish. You didn't make that classic mistake. Slowed down for a while, but you just kind of circled in tighter and tighter, found what that school of salmon was, and, by 9 o'clock, we had our limit, which was fantastic. let's talk about the bait, though, because that was very intriguing to me. I was expecting we were going to use herring, but we were using anchovies, and I don't even think there are a whole lot of anchovies up here.
No, there isn't. I don't know why it seems to work. A nice shiny little bait fish, I guess. Maybe as they move further south, they primarily feed on them, so when they see them up here, they're pretty happy about it.
Now, you had some dodgers or flashers as well, and you had some, basically, for lack of a better word, helmet heads for the anchovies. Tell us about the colors you like to use there.
So we tend to use a lot of green and purples. Just seems to be what works for us. I mean, but it all depends on the day. It can vary. I mean, sometimes we're using gold or blue. Like it just depends on the day.
One last thing before we leave the topic of salmon. Again, 12 to 20 pound fish. I was really happy with this, but they're just going to get bigger and bigger as the summer progresses, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. As the fish that actually spawn in the rivers a little closer to we are, they get a little larger and larger in size. So these fish we catch today are probably heading a little further south, whereas later in the year we're going to get fish that are actually looking to spawn a little closer to our home here.
When it comes to August, how big does the average size fish get, and what's the biggest you've seen caught on your boat?
The average moves to about 20 pounds, 20 plus. The biggest fish that I've guided is 43 pounds.
Oh my gosh. And that, anything over 30, I understand, qualifies for the Tyee Club, correct?
That is correct, yeah. 20 or 30 is a pretty special fish to catch.
Well, we're going out again tomorrow. Maybe we'll go ahead and get to join the club. We will see. But let's go ahead and talk about halibut now. And folks, you're listening to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. We're talking to guide Mitch Walker, who's given us a great day on the saltwater off of Port Hardy, BC. He guides for Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing. They've got several boats operating out of Port Hardy, BC, and they do a fantastic job. We'll tell you more about that when we talk to Chad later in the show. Halibut. We didn't have to go too far. We were fishing actually quite shallow, surprisingly shallow, and in 45 minutes, we had our 2 halibut of 20-plus pounds.
Yeah, we're pretty lucky. Obviously, we're not fishing them 300 feet. We get good shallow water halibut. About 50, 60 feet is what we fished them in today. And it makes for a great fight, and you're not too tired by the end of it, which is nice.
2 methods you were using, and you also had several different baits for the halibut as well. So one of them was basically large weight with a big hoochie attached, for lack of a better word, almost like a jig sort of scenario where you're just banging the bottom, as you say. But the baits, you had herring, you had squid. Those seem to work pretty well.
Yeah, they all seem to work. The halibut are basically big garbage cans swimming around. They like to eat just about anything they can get their mouths on.
Both fish we got today, though, I know that that's a tried and true method, but both fish we got today, a little bit different system. You basically used salmon bellies, and you used a spreader bar and a weight, and basically drifted it, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. The salmon bellies are a little bit of a treat for them, I think, and they're pretty successful. The spreader bar and the weight, usually it's there to let out a good scent trail, and it just happened to catch the fish today.
Well, it worked, and that brings us to part 3 of our trifecta today, and that's the bottom fishing. We got into a whole bunch of quillback rockfish. We got into a lingcod. No yellow eye today, but I understand those are very common, and also a few other species of rockfish, too. There's some great bottom fishing out here.
Yeah, there is. Today, obviously, we didn't get a great drift, but we did fairly well on them, and same idea. Herring, they seem to enjoy herring, but we can use jigs for them as well.
The other thing I liked about the way you fished for them, I'm used to basically fishing a big jig, maybe with some herring on it, and, dropping it down and working it for these rockfish. But you basically had us drifting for them and just having that rod in the rod holder and just maintaining contact just off the bottom. It was very effective. Yeah,
it does seem to work well, and it's a great way to try and hold on to some more gear without hooking into the bottom every single time. You keep her about 2-3 feet off the bottom, and as you drift across the rock pile, it seems to trigger strikes.
Well, and folks, I'll tell you what, this is a big ocean, but Mitch knows where a lot of these hidden rock piles are, and man, if you can find one of those with your fish finder and your GPS, you're going to probably be in for some really good fishing if you fish the drop-offs there. And you like to fish around that 140-foot level for these fish, didn't you?
Yeah, 140 down to about 300 is pretty key, I find, especially if you want to start looking for a little larger size and numbers.
All right, before we go, let's run through limits, both daily limits and possession limits, so folks have an idea of how many fish they can take home here. And by the way, when it comes to the fish, processing is included. This is an all-inclusive package. Your lodging's taken care of, your meals are taken care of, and by the way, lunch was great, and so was breakfast, and so was dinner last night. And your fish processing is taken care of, too. So, limits when it comes to salmon?
2 Chinook per person, and that's all summer long, unless they tell us otherwise.
And the possession limit is 4.
Correct, yeah, 4.
And when it comes to halibut, it's a little bit different because you got some slot limits there.
Yeah, we do. So it's been like this for the past few years. It's your possession is 2, 1 per day, and 1 can be over a size. Our limit is 82 centimeters. Anything over that is considered an oversize, and 1 under is under 82 centimeters.
All right. And last but not least, lingcod and bottomfish.
So depending on the area we're in, but generally we're in an area, it's about 3 rockfish. 1 can be yellow eye, and 3 lingcod per person as well.
And possession limits for those is basically double?
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
All right, well, there you go. You can get a lot of fish up here. You can get into a lot of good fishing. I was amazed that we were able to get into all 3 species today and just have a fantastic day of fishing out here. If you want to find out more, go to the website, Chad's. If you want to find out more, go to Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing website. It's coastwidesportsfishing.com, coastwidesportsfishing.com. You can either drive here like we did, or you can go ahead and take a plane here. But either way, you've got to get to Port Hardy for some fantastic fishing. Mitch, thanks for a fantastic day on the water.
Yeah, thank you guys. This is fun.
It doesn't matter what sort of adventure you're after, whether it's big game deep in the backcountry, a day of fishing out on the water, or an overnight in the great outdoors. At Sportsman's Warehouse, we've got the gear in here for what you need out there. Gear up for your next adventure at one of the Sportsman's Warehouse stores or shop online. Sportsman's Warehouse, America's premier outfitter.
You're back with more of the great outdoors on Northwestern Outdoors Radio with John Cruz.
It's that time again. That's right. It's time for another Max Minute.
Fish on!
Brought to you every week by Max Lure Company. With us again, Lance Mers. Lance, a lot of people have got salmon on the brain, whether they're fishing in places like Tillamook Bay or fishing the Columbia River, and a lot of them are trolling herring as well. Any lures in particular that Max Lure might have to help them out?
John, we got the Smile Blade herring rig, and it's kind of unique because we got a 4-aught hook and a 3-aught hook, but it's on a bobber stop, so you can slide these hooks to fit the herring itself. And then right below the Smile Blade, we've got a bobber stop, so you can actually move the Smile Blade so it doesn't affect the spin or the action of that herring.
So you can use different sizes of herring. So let me throw something else at you. A lot of folks like to use anchovies for bait. Will the herring rig work for anchovies as well?
Absolutely. The top hook has actually got an egg loop snell, so you could actually tie that in and fit it to the size of that anchovy. Herring and anchovy are pretty much the same size, so there's no doubt that this will work for that.
All right, so whether you're going to be trolling a big herring or whether you're going to be trolling a smaller herring or an anchovy, the Max Herring Rig may be for you. The added flash you're going to get from that Smile Blade is definitely going to draw some more strikes. Look for it at a sporting goods store near you or online at maxlure.com.
Game-changing. That's the best way to describe the new Scent Flash UV Triangle Flasher from Max Lure Company. This 360-degree rotational inline flasher features a scent release system attracting salmon to the lure behind it like no other flasher on the market. Soak the free scent pad with any type of oil or gel, or load up the cavity with any type of bait for fishing success beyond your wildest dreams. It's the Scent Flash UV Triangle Flasher, only from Max Lure Company.
Spring comes early to Moses Lake. Right now, visitors can enjoy over 6,500 acres of waterways to fish, kayak, and birdwatch. Plus, explore 120 miles of shoreline. Moses Lake has world-class golf courses. Add the 3,000 acres and Sun Dunes ORV Park, and you have the perfect playground. All the services you'd ever want are right there in Moses Lake. Hotels, the campgrounds, and restaurants for every budget and taste. Learn more about all that Moses Lake has to offer at moseslake360.com.
Schuler Productions has 3 great shows coming your way in 2019. The long-running Central Washington Sportsman Show is back at the Sundome in Yakima, February 15th through the 17th. And don't forget the Wenatchee Valley Sportsman Show, February 22nd through the 24th at the Town Toyota Center. With seminars for adults, activities for the kids, and lots of things to see, these shows are sure to be fun for the whole family. Find out more at SchulerProductions.com.
A quality and affordable fishing adventure is waiting for you off Vancouver Island with Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing. Located in Port Hardy, British Columbia, you can drive or fly to your all-inclusive guided fishing vacation. Whether you're after big salmon, heart-fighting halibut, or a cooler full of red snapper and lingcod, you can catch it all here. Better yet, your lodging, meals, and fish processing are all taken care of. Want one more reason to go? The price. With the Canadian dollar exchange rate where it is right now, your U.S. dollar goes further. Space is limited, so go to coastwidesportsfishing.com to book your trip. That's coastwidesportsfishing.com for an incredible BC fishing adventure.
Welcome back to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. We've been exploring Port Hardy, British Columbia. We've been telling you about all the fishing you can do up here. And by George, the fishing is fantastic, as you have probably figured out during this show. But there's more than just fishing here. With us here to tell us about all the adventures you can have up here at the north end of Vancouver Island and around Port Hardy is the manager of the Port Hardy Visitor Information Center, Louisa Bates. Louisa, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Louisa, what is the tagline for Port Hardy? I think folks are going to enjoy this.
Live the adventure.
There is quite a bit of adventure to be had here. Again, we've talked a lot about fishing, but you have all sorts of activities, lots of hiking, fantastic wildlife viewing, do-it-yourself kayaking, and even surfing. And we want to get into all of this, but we'll take it one step at a time. For folks coming here to Port Hardy, first impressions. I mean, you almost feel like you're at the edge of the frontier. I mean, this is truly the end of the road as far north as you can go on Vancouver Island.
Absolutely. Port Hardy has a variety of natural ingredients that can make up your adventure. And I think there's tons of different things that you can experience. You just got to know what there is to do and how to get out there. So that's why we're here and here to help you to do that.
Well, let's go ahead and start off with just what's in town. I mean, right behind the visitor center, taking my daughter out for a couple days now on this wonderful family fishing dock you have there.
Yeah, so there's a variety of fishing that you can experience as you've been out recreationally fishing, but we do have opportunities to do that right here in town. So for families that are just sort of hanging out local, you can go out on our local docks and you can try and catch a rockfish right here.
In addition to that, I've noticed quite a few trails around here that take you to some pretty interesting viewpoints. Great scenery here.
Port Hardy has a variety of different trails that you can do. Some of them include a nice leisurely stroll right along the waterfront. You can take in the scenic view of the local islands and the surrounding area and all the way across to the coastal mountain range.
Now, you have one trail, I think it's along the Quatsy River, and that one actually takes you to a salmon information center, and I just kind of looking at the information, looks like there'd be a good chance to see a bear there as well.
Oh, absolutely. So you can go right off from the Quatsy River Trail. You can do that half-an-hour loop nice and leisurely along the river's edge, and it does take you, in fact, to some spots where there are opportunities to view bears, black bears in particular, throughout various times of the year. Best time of year to do that would be sometime between the end of July and the end of September when the salmon are returning to the rivers.
That sounds like a great plan. Let's go ahead and go a little bit further out from the city limits here. If we're on the saltwater, which we are, everybody wants to go to a beach. And I understand you have a very scenic one, just like a 5-minute drive away.
Absolutely. So nice and close to town is Port Hardy's Stories Beach. This is a must-do if you're local to the area. Stories Beach offers a beautiful, gorgeous, sandy shoreline that you can explore. There's opportunities to build sandcastles, check out tide pools, and again, take in the local view of the islands and the coastline mountain range behind.
In addition to that, you've got a couple of hiking trails, one of them pretty challenging, that emanate from Stories Beach too.
That would be the Tex Line Trail. The Tex Line Trail is a little bit more challenging. It's something that we would recommend to folks that they do have experience hiking to do. It typically would take about 4 hours or so getting out to the far end of the trail, and it takes you all the way out to Dillon Point, which overlooks the Queen Charlotte Strait. But it is a challenging one. You've got lots of ups and downs that you got to tackle, including some rope spots. But, you know, just be prepared to have fun and see some great views and get a little bit muddy while you're doing it.
Another hike that we have to talk about here occurs, well, in a roadless area, Cape Scott. Tell our listeners about this opportunity to do some incredible waterfront, oceanfront hiking and how you get there to do it.
Cape Scott Provincial Park is actually located by a gravel logging road 2 hours drive from Port Hardy. So folks that are heading out there are going out to the beautiful northwest of northern Vancouver Island. When they get to the Cape Scott boundaries, they park their vehicle and they can take 2 various hikes. One includes just going out to the Cape Scott itself, which typically takes folks about 6 to 8 hours. It is considered sort of challenging, a little bit difficult here and there, but for the most part, fairly enjoyable. Then you get out to the Cape and there's beautiful beaches that you can enjoy. There's Nell's Bight, Nissim Bight, but again, just remember that takes about 6 to 8 hours. There is a shorter option that you can do that takes you out to San Joseph Bay. It's an absolutely beautiful trail and a beautiful beach, and it includes sightings of sea stacks and sea caves and lots of coastline to explore.
That sounds like a fantastic hiking option, but I understand there's even more. There's another option available as well.
That's right. So for the more avid hikers, you can go and do the North Coast Trail. This trail connects you from Port Hardy up to Shishardi Bay via water taxi. You then embark on a windswept, rugged terrain hike all the way across the very northern tip of Vancouver Island, connecting back into the Cape Scott Park. This typically takes people from about 6 to 8 days to do, depending on their level of experience. This is a trail that if you do decide to take it, we certainly recommend people do your homework and check it out, but it is again taking you to some of the most remote, beautiful locations on northern Vancouver Island that there is to experience.
Wow. All right. Lots of hiking adventures to be had. Again, you're listening to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. We're talking to Louisa Bates at the Port Hardy Visitor Information Center. We've been talking about a lot of hikes you can take around here, but there's other outdoors activities you can enjoy as well beyond the fishing that brings most people to Port Hardy. And one of them, oddly enough, is surfing.
Yeah, so if you're interested in surfing and want to check out some of the West Coast waves, you can actually go to the Cove right here in Port Hardy, where you can pick up a board, pick up your suit, and head out to the West Coast. You can try and hit Raft Cove Provincial Park, San Joseph Bay, or Grant Bay and see how the water does.
And I understand this is becoming more and more popular. You know, most people equate surfing with down in Southern California and in Hawaii. It's starting to pick up now in Southern Washington State, Northern Oregon. But I'm hearing more and more people coming to the west coast of Vancouver Island and up in this area in particular, really getting into the surfing here.
Absolutely. There's a lot of residents local to the region here that just, they get out and embark on these kind of adventures themselves, and it's a really do-it-yourself sort of style.
Speaking of do-it-yourself, one last thing I've got to ask you about. We've been fishing here the last few days, and these straits are just dotted with islands and coves and rugged wilderness beaches and just all sorts of beckoning places to explore. And I can only imagine that doing so in a kayak would be a fantastic way to do it.
Absolutely. So from Port Hardy, being able to trace the coastline is just an incredible experience. While there are no local options to rent a kayak, there are some outfitters that you can go out and do guided trips with, including one very notable location, which is God's Pocket. And so you can make arrangements ahead of time. They pick you up here in Port Hardy and they take you out to the beautiful Browning Pass, and you can just explore some of that remote coastal region.
I'm guessing there's lots of do-it-yourself opportunities around here as well, starting right here in Port Hardy Bay and just kind of kayaking out to the islands.
Absolutely. So you can go right out of Stories Beach, launch your kayak there, and just check out some of the isles and inlets that there are, and just relax and explore.
Last but not least, wildlife watching. I mean, here in town, you have more eagles than you can shake a stick at. Absolutely love that. We already mentioned bears are a possibility and quite common in this area. What other wildlife are people likely to see while they're visiting Port Hardy and the surrounding area?
Well, you sort of nailed it on the head there. With bears and eagles, that does consist a lot of the wildlife that you can see in the area. But if you're spending time on the water, there's all sorts of different marine life that you can see. Anything from seals and sea lions, porpoises and dolphins, killer whales, humpbacks, gray whales, you name it. They're out here and in this area.
You're absolutely right. Matter of fact, we saw all of them in just the last 3 days. And there's something special about fishing for salmon close to the shoreline, and in between you and the shoreline, you've got a humpback whale right next to you. It's just a wonderful experience. And I can't say enough about the great time we've had at Port Hardy, except to invite people to come up here too, not just for the fishing, but all these other adventures we've told you about. Louisa, let's give folks a website so they can find out more.
Check out visitporthardy.com.
That's visitporthardy.com. Visitporthardy.com. You'll find them on Facebook too. Check them out and plan a trip up here to the north end of Vancouver Island. Louisa, thanks for telling us about this on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
Thanks for having me again.
We've been talking a lot about saltwater fishing, and there just happens to be a show dedicated to this. It's coming up February 23rd and 24th. It is the Saltwater Sportsman Show. It's taking place at the State Fairgrounds in Salem, Oregon. And if you are a saltwater angler, you won't want to miss this. There's demos. There's all sorts of seminars to help you improve your game, whether you are a tuna, salmon, or halibut angler. There's even seminars on how to repair your own fishing reel and catching fish from shore. It's the Saltwater Sportsman Show, February 23rd and the 24th at the State Fairgrounds in Salem. You don't want to miss this, and you can find out more at saltwatersportsmanshow.com. That's saltwatersportsmanshow.com. This is a special best of edition of Northwestern Outdoors Radio, recorded in the saltwater off of Port Hardy, British Columbia. I think you're going to enjoy this.
I'm gonna take you fishing, honey. You're gonna love it.
Welcome back to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. We're broadcasting from the saltwater in Queen Charlotte Strait. Oh, not too far from Port Hardy in British Columbia. We're fishing with Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing. Now, we've already been on the water once before. We told you about the trifecta you can catch. But today we're with Brian Ramage, and we have had a lights-out morning of fishing for Chinook salmon. What do we do? Hook about 10 salmon in about the space of an hour today?
Yeah, I think we were into about 10 fish there. We got our box loaded up, and we're going to switch gear, and we're going to go hit some bottom fish now.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about the exact technique you use to get these fish in the boat. So we're using downriggers, and let's go ahead and go from there. So somebody is out here with a rod. They've got their single-action reel that we talked about earlier in the show. They got the downrigger. How are you setting up? How deep are you going?
We're using flasher setups and mainly teaser heads and anchovies. We do run a few spoons every now and again. It just speeds things up when the fishing's fast and furious. And depth-wise, actually, it's a pretty shallow fishery. We're only going down about 45, 55 feet, sometimes knocking the bottoms down around 80 feet. But everything we do here is a fairly shallow game, and it keeps things pretty exciting.
Oh, it definitely does. As good of a guide as Brian is, I'd like to say we're the only ones that did this good, but everybody out here is doing this good this morning. We've got 4 boats from Chad's Coastwide Fishing that are fishing out here, and it's been non-stop action this morning. The other thing I love about fishing here, we're actually just right off the mainland. We motored over across Queen Charlotte Strait, is not only do you get to fish for salmon, you get to see whales. I mean, just yards away while you're doing it.
Yeah, we get lots of whales and some porpoises. We saw some humpback whales today. We've got killer whales out here, minke whales, gray whales, and even the odd wolf that'll swim by. One of our guides last year got some pictures of a wolf that was swimming from island to island. Now, that's a once-in-a-lifetime experience right there.
Absolutely. So, if you want to go ahead and fish in a beautiful location, if you want to go ahead and have some lights out salmon fishing for Chinook up to 20 pounds, you got to book with Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing. Find out more at coastwidesportsfishing.com. That's coastwidesportsfishing.com. Brian, thanks for a great day.
All right, and thank you.
Let's talk about getting to Port Hardy, BC, and some tips that might help you out along the way. First off, you'll want to get your fishing license before you go. It's really simple to do. You just go to BC Ocean Fisheries. You can buy it online. Just get the 3-day title license and salmon stamp. Believe it or not, it's only $26. Quite the bargain. If you don't have a fish processor lined up like they do at Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing, you need to contact one in advance. Find out the details of turnaround time for processing, whether you need to bring coolers or if they'll provide them at a cost, and whether or not you want to ship. And I'll give you a tip. Don't ship. This is something we learned the hard way. We decided to have Hardy Boys, which is a great fish processor and great fish smoker up there, smoke a 22-pound salmon that we caught. Well, that 22-pound salmon is going to take about a week to smoke, but then it's going to take an additional 2 to 6 weeks to ship back to us. Total cost for this, $200. Now, here's the next question. Do you fly or do you drive? Well, if you want to fly, just get to Vancouver, and Pacific Coastal Airlines offers flights to and from the Vancouver South Terminal several times a day. Their website, pacificcoastal.com, I've flown with them before, really enjoy their rides. You can also drive and take the ferry from Vancouver. We took a ferry from Tawasin, just south of Vancouver, to Nanaimo, and you'll want to reserve a spot in advance. You can do it online through the BC Ferries website, and I say that because these boats, as big as they are, they fill up quick. If you're lucky, you'll get to ride on the Coastal Inspiration out of Tawasin. It is a huge new ferry with wonderful amenities, comfortable seats, really comfortable quiet ride. You'll think you're on a cruise ship instead of a ferry ship. Once you're on the island, it's about 4 to 4.5 hours to Port Hardy. If you're heading north from Nanaimo, places like Campbell River, Telegraph Cove, and Port McNeil are all worth a stop if you have time to do so. And now, let's talk to the owner of Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing, who will tell you what happens once you get to Port Hardy. We've been fishing with Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing, been having a spectacular time. And with us here to tell us a little bit more about how you can book a trip as well is the owner, Chad Calder. Chad, great to have you on the show again.
Oh, I'm glad to be back. It's you guys have had an outstanding trip.
Oh, we certainly have. And if you didn't catch the earlier segment of the show, the great thing about fishing up here at Port Hardy is you honestly have a great chance at what I call the trifecta. You get your salmon, you get your halibut, and you get your bottom fish all in a day of fishing. And with the all-inclusive packages that Chad has to offer, you can do it 2 days in a row, 3 days in a row, even up to 4 days in a row, 2 or 3 fishing from a boat. Chad, and that's one of the things I really like. I like your boats, and I like the fact that the crowds, so to speak, are small. It's a very personalized experience.
Yeah, actually, our operation, where we fish, you don't see many boats in a day, and our access to our playground, if you will, is incredible. So because you don't have that boat traffic, the nice thing is every day there's always enough fish for all the boats. It's not really a scratch fishery. It just seems to be a lot of fish around, and once again, without the boat traffic, your odds are that you're going to come home with limits most days.
Well, not only that, but I like the personalized attention you get from the guides. I mean, I've been on, my fair share of charter boats where you're fishing with anywhere from 6 guys to up to 20 guys off the, Oregon and Washington coast, and this is just so much better when it's just 2 or 3 of you in a boat.
Yeah, and John, you brought up a really good point. Years ago when we started with 1 boat, and now we're up to 6 boats, the only way to build your business up in this environment is to actually surround yourself with good people. Not everybody can fish with me, and I tell everyone that all my guides are as good as me and as nice as me and will put you onto the fish at any given time. And that's truly the nucleus of our business, is our customer service. Our guides are spectacular and our boats are incredible.
I absolutely agree with you on that. And folks, these are Grady white boats, very stable, great fishing platforms, very roomy in the back, so you got plenty of room to fish. Besides all of that is just the spectacular scenery out here. I mean, we get going and you've got all these uninhabited islands. You've got this rugged coastline. It's full of timber. You got mountains all over the place. Lots of wildlife to boot. I mean, it's just gorgeous out here.
It is, and that's another huge advantage to us, is because where we go, where our access to the scenery is virtually untouched. So you're going to see whales, porpoises, all the sea lions that you want. It really is. So many eagles. The wildlife it's just incredible.
Well, and it starts right here in Port Hardy, BC, where at any given moment you're likely to see up to a dozen eagles flying around. So it is spectacular wildlife viewing, but the fishing, though, is what brings people here. And it's only late June, and we're getting salmon up to 20 pounds. We're getting halibut that are over 20, and I know that they go much, much bigger than that.
Yeah, well, we get halibut all the time that are 150, 200 pounds, and the ones that we keep are in the 40 to 70 pound range. The best eaten fish, and there's just a lot of them around, so it's nice. And you started off by saying the trifecta, and I guess that's really what it is too, is we don't just fish for one species every day. We fish for all the species every day. So we usually start the mornings with some salmon, but we do get a lot of halibut just trolling for salmon, so we get the halibut, and then we go off and spend a few hours rockfish fishing and lingcod fishing, and then we come home. It's a nice day, and your access to all the species is every day.
Well, it definitely is. And again, having been on some charter boats off of Washington, Oregon, usually it's just one species you're after. If you're really lucky, you might have a combo trip with bottom fish and salmon. But to get all 3 like this and to have solid results every day in an unspoiled setting with tons of wildlife viewing, it just doesn't get any better. So let's turn our topic to one other thing. We've talked about this before, but for those who aren't listening here, it's all-inclusive what you offer here. So the lodging takes place at one of 2 nice hotels right here in front of the marina where you operate out of. And I love the diner's cards that you give to your guests. Go ahead and explain that to our listeners.
Yeah, so we came up with this idea about 8 years ago, and what it is when you check in, the rooms are under your names, and when you check in, you'll get a little welcome package, and there's diner's cards in there. These diner's cards, you simply take them to any one of the restaurants listed, and you order anything you want off the menus, and it gets billed to us. So each restaurant sort of offers something different in itself, and you don't have to eat at any of them at any given time. You can go anytime, and there's lots of different choices. So it's not like a lodge where there's a dinner bell and everybody has to eat at the same time, or you have to eat one of the two items. You get lots and lots of choices here.
Well, you certainly do. And by the way, folks, some of the food up here is pretty good. Highly recommend Sporty's Bar and Grill. Try the chicken wings. You're going to be hard-pressed to beat those. Great halibut and chips as well, and just great seafood at all the restaurants that you have here. We've probably whetted people's appetite in more ways than one, both for the fishing and for the food. The accommodations, again, you're either going to be at the Quarter Deck or you're going to be at the Glen Lion. Both fine hotels, and you are completely booked up for the summer. But that means people need to start thinking about next summer. How can they go ahead and get their booking in now?
Yeah, well, we have a few limited dates throughout the summer now. Not many, but yeah, it's best to get a hold of us at coastwidesportsfishing.com, and we have a Facebook page as well.
That's coastwidesportsfishing.com, coastwidesportsfishing.com. I'll tell you what, folks, this is truly the finest saltwater fishing experience I've ever had. Go ahead and check out coastwidesportsfishing.com. Come up here yourself to Port Hardy. Have the same experience I'm enjoying. You won't regret it. Chad, thanks for everything.
Thank you very much, and hope to see you back here again soon.
I'm gonna take you fishing, honey. You're gonna love it.
Looking for a quality fishing adventure that won't break the bank? Then head to Canada for an all-inclusive fishing vacation with Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing. Big salmon, halibut, snapper, and lingcod are waiting for you off Vancouver Island. But space is limited, so book now at coastwidesportsfishing.com. That's coastwidesportsfishing.com.
If you fly fish or would like to learn how, be at the Linwood Fly Fishing Show, February 16th and 17th in the Linwood Convention Center. Hourly seminars, casting with Gary Borger, Brian O'Keefe, and Phil Rowley. Fabulous fly tires, exotic destinations, and new tackle from all the manufacturers. It's all going to be there for you at the Linwood Fly Fishing Show. Find out online at flyfishingshow.com. See you at the Linwood Fly Fishing Show, February 16th and 17th.
Backcountry Hunters and Anglers seeks to ensure North America's outdoor heritage of hunting and fishing through education and work on behalf of wild public lands and waters. Lend your voice to the fight by visiting www.backcountryhunters.org and join the 25,000 men and women who have pledged to defend wildlife and public access. You can also demonstrate your support by signing up for the 2019 North American Rendezvous in Boise, Idaho, May 1st to the 5th.
Schuler Productions has 3 great shows coming your way in 2019. The long-running Central Washington Sportsman Show is back at the Sundome in Yakima, February 15th through the 17th. And don't forget the Wenatchee Valley Sportsman Show, February 22nd through the 24th at the Town Toyota Center. With seminars for adults, activities for the kids, and lots of things to see, these shows are sure to be fun for the whole family. Find out more at SchulerProductions.com.
It doesn't matter what sort of adventure you're after. Whether it's big game deep in the backcountry, a day of fishing out in the water, or an overnight in the great outdoors. At Sportsman's Warehouse, we've got the gear in here for what you need out there. Gear up for your next adventure at one of the Sportsman's Warehouse stores or shop online. Sportsman's Warehouse, America's premier outfitter.
One more time this week for Northwestern Outdoors Radio with John Cruz.
Before we go, we got to share our Sportsman's Warehouse trivia question of the week with you. Us humans love fishing for salmon off the coast of British Columbia, but we are not the only ones that do. There are 4 species of whales commonly seen in these waters. On any given day, you may see a gray whale, a minke whale, or a humpback whale. But it's the 4th species of whale, the one with the tall dorsal fin that likes eating salmon as much as we do. What species of whale are we talking about here? And by the way, technically speaking, this whale is more dolphin than it is whale. If you think you know, go to our Facebook page and give us your guess. Just look for the post at Northwestern Outdoors Radio and let us know what kind of whale we're talking about here that loves to eat salmon. Another way to do that is through our Facebook page. Go to our Contact Us page, the website, northwesternoutdoors.com. If you win that gift card, you can use it at a Sportsman's Warehouse store near you. There are over 60 stores nationwide, and a very healthy number of them are found right here in the Northwest. Last but not least, Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing. As you can tell, we had an absolutely wonderful time fishing with them out of Port Hardy, British Columbia. You can too. It's probably too late to book for this summer, but now's the time to book for next summer. And who knows, you might get lucky. There might be a spare opening that's still available this season. The website to go to, coastwidesportsfishing.com. That's coastwidesportsfishing.com. You'll love Chad, you'll love his wife Angela, and you'll love fishing with these guys. And most of all, you'll love catching a lot of fish and bringing them home with you. Until next time, take care, God bless, and make it a point to spend some time outdoors.